Good morning once again, everybody. So, this time we are actually going to cover some more businessy, corporate-y, investory type of topics. We're going to start off with, and I know I'm so professional, but stay with me, okay? So, what is one of the biggest problems that corporations have? It's the fact that they have no actual leadership. The reality is since the boomers, corporations have slowly gone from being relatively efficient machines, and honestly, the whole point of a corporation was, in addition to the extra liability protection, the whole point of the corporation was to create this paper organized monstrosity and just unleash it onto the world to make as much money as possible for all the people who invest in it. All right. Whole reason we have a stock market is so the corporates wouldn't have to rely on the banking system, especially pre and post the financial collapses. Anyway, the biggest issue with corporate America is that there is no actual leadership anymore. On top of this, you have to take into account that the majority of these organizations, these corporations, who are they headed by? Who are they headed by? 'Cause back in the 70s, 80s, maybe, you've got some heavy hitter names that were in charge of these. Now, most corporations effectively run on autopilot. They've turned into gigantic bureaucracies. Like, for instance, you can eliminate, and applies to nearly every single corporation in the US and around the world. You can eliminate 90% of processes and nothing bad would happen. Okay, because they've turned into bureaucratic nightmares. All right. These, from the smallest to the largest corporations, they all are essentially headed by, uh, what's the nice way to say this? We'll say prep school kids, the kids who essentially had leadership handed down to them. Now, of course, you can argue that, well, the investors have a choice. Yeah, they have a choice to keep investing because most of these corporations are fueled and funded by America's pensions and 401k plans, everything else. When people talk about BlackRock, and I too, not exactly the biggest fan, um, in the nicest way to put it, people complain about BlackRock, but the reality is, and now even the boomers are starting to complain more about BlackRock, they funded it. They funded all of this. They funded the same people who want to take everything away from them. Like the idea that the younger generations would actually uprise and take everything from the boomers, your own private corporations that you've been investing in since you were 20 are doing it. They're taking everything from you. They're buying everything from you. And on the short end, you might make a decent chunk of change out of it, but on the long end, you, your children, everybody else, kind of boned. All right. I know, again, very professional, but it is what it is. Corporations have no legitimate leadership. The reason why corporations have bloated to the sizes that they have comes down to the fact that nobody wants to bear responsibility for bad calls. All right. Now, a lot of times, and this is common with people that were or are actively working in the corporate environment, you have an idea and you want to throw it out there, but you just don't. All right. Because you can have an idea, but if the corporation decides to do anything with it, once it goes through 80 different processes where the idea is bastardized and polluted to the point that it's not going to really be of any benefit anymore, um, what's the point? What's the point? Also, why the hell would you give a corporation that you're working for good ideas when you're not really getting anything for it? All right. There's no leadership. Corporate America bloated, mostly with kids who from, wealthy families, kids who didn't have to actually work and struggle and bust their ass to survive. Kids who don't have any kind of real exposure to the real world, touch the grass and the dirt. Anyway, there is no leadership. You have the corporate bureaucracy. You've got multiple different layers to try to make anything happen. And the whole time, like, just as an example, I knew this guy, and his name was Rich. For a time, he was essentially the inventory manager for one of the bigger box stores back before they got rid of his position. Um, Regardless, he took a massive shot in the dark. All right. He's not a meteorologist, but he does pay attention. Um, and essentially, he was the only reason, I believe it was during the blizzard of 93, he was the only reason why um, his location, with a couple others that followed suit, but his location in particular, ordered a massive, massive amount of generators. And everybody around him thought he was a complete fucking idiot because they hadn't had snow. There wasn't a massive amount of snow. There was no expectation that things would, get bad. And then out of nowhere, boom, you finally get a blizzard and it hits. All right. And you need every generator, snowblowers too, every generator and snowblower possible. They were the only ones. A couple others had lighter inventories, and towards the end, they had to break apart the massive amount that he ordered in order to try to supply the other locations. Everybody thought he was an idiot. He threw his fucking hat in the ring. He took a shot. And they sold so many generators, so many snowblowers, so much salt that time came around, it's just like, ah, shit. All right, this guy is actually fucking smart. All right. Because back then, of course, back when you had inventory managers, there was a lot more integration into the books where every single location actually had to balance what they were getting versus what they were selling. He took a chance, it paid off. Nobody in corporate America is willing to do that kind of thing. Not only is nobody willing, but even if they were willing, the corporate megastructure would not let that happen. Would not let that happen under any circumstances. Massive truckloads of generators and snowblowers just going to one random location in a network. They'd never go for it. Even if they had the foreknowledge that, this wasn't just going to be a snowstorm, it was going to be a blizzard. Even if they had the foreknowledge, they still wouldn't do it because everybody is afraid of bearing the consequences of fucking up. All right. Nobody wants to take risks anymore. All right. This is especially apparent. Nobody wants to take risks anymore. Like, if you look at one of the mm, Tractor Supply, for instance, Tractor Supply Company, they are sitting on gold mines that they haven't even tapped yet. Haven't even tapped yet. All right. They've gotten close. They're still doing quite a lot. But there are gold mines of possibilities and opportunities right now for that organization. And they're not doing shit. All right. Um it's it's a thing. Also, another thing that goes along with taking the risk, everybody's scared shitless of having a bad quarter. And I don't get it. So what? You had a bad quarter. You had a bad year. Who fucking cares? Who cares? Oh my God, the investors might sell to other investors. There's always going to be a buyer. All right. Until you go bankrupt, there's always going to be another buyer. Just imagine you somehow found yourself in charge of an organization that is pushing shares for a penny. All right, literally penny shares. Okay. If somebody buys a fuckload of shares for a penny and you manage to bring the value of the stock up to two, you just doubled somebody's money. That's something to be pretty fucking ecstatic about if you honestly care about the investor. And I'm going to tell you this right now. Fuck the investor. All right? Truthfully, fuck the investors. While we have a fiduciary responsibility, you also have a responsibility to maximize the profits, not just for the shareholder, but in general. If you really want to maximize profits, you have to take risks. You have to elevate the people who are willing to take the shots when they see them. All right, who you need people who are willing to put their ass on the line. All right, make a bet, a solid bet. And if it goes well, fantastic. If it goes poorly, oh well. You lost your investment cost for whatever you were trying to do next. Damn, that sucks. Guess it's going to be a bad quarter. Who cares what in the hell CNBC or any of the other investment media slop, who cares what they say? Who cares what comes out of their mouths? All right, because for the most part, the only thing that's kept the American stock market going are the passive flows coming from retirement accounts. Like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They might sell today and they'll be buying next week. They'll be buying next month. It doesn't matter. The boomers in particular, even though they're finally on their way out, but even Gen X's automated accounts. These people have no fucking idea what they're invested in. Boomers don't know what they're invested in. Gen X doesn't know what they're invested in. Any generation after isn't really vested too much, but most people don't know what they're invested in, what these companies or organizations are actually doing or are up to. Who fucking cares if you have a bad quarter? Take a fucking risk for once. All right? Now, any dream of professionalism is flying right out the window now. But, for instance, I guarantee you right now, I can find an unemployed dude who was working on an assembly line for Ford or any of the automakers, or honestly, I could probably find some guy who works at a supermarket. I'm not even joking. And he would make better financial decisions and better overall functional decisions for a corporation than any of the people currently in most of these corporations. All right. Also, I will say tech is overrated, but I do know of one big orange organization where they really badly need technology, and they are practically illiterate in terms of technological integration, especially for their inventory. They do hand counts for their inventory. And of course, particularly when it comes to retail locations, the people they have counting the inventory, these are the people who you would expect to not have GEDs, to not have a basic high school education. But these people somehow made it through high school, and these people cannot count or follow basic instruction, such as do not count display items, you know, things like that. Things like that. And they still count them. And the numbers are always off. And then on top of it, this one in particular that I'm thinking of mandates that any of their suppliers, all right, so third party products, anything they get, they demand that any of their suppliers uh, crank out a bunch of labels for them. And if they order entire, like, let's say they order a truckload, multiple truckloads, and do distribution on the front end, if they order massive truckloads, They expect the workers at the warehouses to actually attach the labels to the right product, when in reality, what they're doing in most cases is just blindly slapping stickers onto whatever pallet comes up first, and then it gets shipped to them. So they actually have no fucking idea what they have in inventory. Like, they could have a 30% inventory error rate, and honestly, that's on the conservative end, and they have no fucking idea. Not a single fucking clue. Of course, I did mention that they are big in orange, and you should absolutely know which retailer I'm talking about. But so many of the problems come from people trying to, and especially with the corporate blow, trying to abstract themselves for responsibility for bad choices. All right? Because it's not enough that we have these giant corporate structures to limit liability, but then everybody is so desperate to hold on to their corporate jobs that they want to separate themselves as much from the actual decision making as possible. They create a massive, massive just road work of so many steps to get to a final solution. Mm, that they're inefficient and they're useless. They're absolutely useless. Like, with all of the and I'm gonna call it for what it is, with all of the corporate backed regulation, all right, all of the work that's been done to essentially push normal people out of the arena in terms of competing, even with all of the laws stacked against normal people, trying to start their own businesses to compete with these corporations. These corporations are so bloated and take so long to actually do anything that legitimately any small business owner, if they can just say 4 or 5 primary processes, they can absolutely wipe the floor with these corporates. And the truth is, like, most of the corporates, they're only financed by debt anyway. Honestly, I'm starting to wonder if the majority of corporations on the US stock exchanges, I'm starting to wonder if they're all doing circular accounting in the background. We know that it's happening with the AI boom, but what's to say they're not doing it in every single corporate in this country? What do they have to do? Hit 1 to 2% growth? The currency grows by that. Literally, you could just keep growing based on the inflation rate and, well, based on the official projected inflation rates, and nobody bats an eye. The reality is, even though I am not personally too keen on the idea of laying off entire staffs and divisions, the reality is, if we're going to be serious about corporations and business and investment and actually creating institutions and organizations that can persist through time, your average American corporation is on death's fucking door, financially speaking. The wealthy preppy kids, the rich kids who have made their way into these corporate machines, all they're doing is giving themselves stock options. The corporates are have been borrowing and doing buybacks for ages now. The corporation borrows a fuckload of money at relatively low interest rates, all of the higher levels of authority in it. They hand themselves stocks and they cash out, they make their money, the organization goes deeper in debt. All right. Honestly, considering just the sheer volume of information that's floating around out there, I really do have to wonder how many of these organizations are just floated by base perception. Like, we know fundamentals don't matter anymore, okay? Or at least they won't matter until something breaks. But fundamentals, I mean, you have companies that are valued, what, 16 to 1 people are buying shares? Or bots are buying shares? It's a thing. More and more of the stock market's being influenced by AI buying and selling. You have to ask yourself the question, how much of the information that is widely available to the public, how much of that information is doctored to hide the crippling reality that your average corporations in the United States are a sniffle, isn't that convenient? A sniffle away from total bankruptcy because they're not efficient. And you don't need 8 different people. You don't need 80 different people. You don't need 800 or 8,000 people to make a decision. You need one person. One person who's actually skilled, capable, and competent enough to do it. Again, not every call is going to be a right one. But that doesn't mean you should try to insulate yourself infinitely from any of the consequences. All right? Corporations, given, investors might get pissy. If there are any real investors, they might get pissy at the idea that the organization had a bad quarter or a bad year. Who the fuck cares? Who cares? Legitimately, I have to say it. Screw the investor. What the hell are they going to do? What are they going to do? They're going to whine and cry about it. They're going to sell their shares. They're going to throw a fit. And you know what's going to happen? If the decision, if it turns out to be a success, they'll come crawling right the fuck back. If it ends up failing, okay, maybe you don't listen to Steve or Frank's or Trish's next new idea. You listen to somebody else's. Things are not that hard. But honestly, I am reasonably happy to know that corporations have essentially, well, corporations have ball gagged themselves and chained themselves to the bed. Like, there is absolutely nothing that they can do now, especially after all the years of DEI hiring. Like, my God. My God. Who could have known that hiring people whose only value in life is a handful of these topics? Who would have known that these people would not be great fits for, leading a corporation forward and making it successful? Who could have possibly known? Like, yeah, you have to call it for what it is. These people, a lot of these people, vast majority of these people who are attached to the decision making process, who are part of the corporate bureaucracy, these people are just wasted space and wasted oxygen. That's the reality. You could eliminate most of your office costs. You can eliminate most of the delay in making any kind of decision. You can eliminate most of, if not all of the overhead. You only really need a handful of people to run a corporation now, which might be terrible for some people to hear, but it's the truth, especially as AI gets better. You don't need a whole horde of people. You only need a handful. You can literally run any major corporate from your average doctor's office worth of space. All right? Legitimately. What major groundbreaking decisions do you need thousands, tens of thousands of people for? Well, we need a compliance guy. Okay, keep the compliance guy. Keep your lawyers. All right? Keep them third party. Do you need lawyers in house? Okay, keep a lawyer in house. But what all do you really need? You can farm out literally everything to the third parties. You need new graphical assets. You need new business copy. You can literally farm that out like nothing. Like nothing. Everybody's doing that now. Everybody's doing business copy. Everybody's doing graphics. Do you need legit graphics? Do you need non AI generated graphics? There's tons of people who are unemployed, underemployed, who are looking to make whatever scratch they can. You've got no shortage of talent. Also, on a side note, we do also have to talk about the not just as it relates to the competency crisis, but we do have to talk about this. Corporations that mandate, and especially because there's still the push and the whining and crying and complaining that, oh my God, we don't have enough skilled people. No, you don't have enough credentialed people. There is no shortage of skill in the United States. There's no shortage in Western Europe. There's no shortage anywhere. There are skilled human beings all over the place. They just don't have the credentials that makes the HR ladies tic tacs sing. All right, that's all it is. Now, I stand by the fact, I stand by the belief that people should not be blowing money they don't have going to college for the hope of a job in the future one day. I stand by the belief that if corporations want credentialed people, they should pay for it. Okay? Now, organizations might not like that, but fuck you. Okay? That's all I can really say. Fuck yourself. There is no reason. No reason. All right? It's essentially the same thing as guys buying fancy sports cars to try to get laid. There is no guarantee with that. And even if you do pick up a chick with a, whatever model it's going to be, a Ferrari, a Lambo, it doesn't particularly matter. You're likely going to get the most gold digging airhead that you possibly can. And if she doesn't get you for all your money, she's probably going to leave you with a present that you're not going to be happy to receive in one way or another. The idea, all right, the idea that we have a skilled labor shortage, like for instance, recently I've been I've been doing my part to try to help a guy out who was recently unemployed. And he actually got shot down by a company because he didn't have 6 months' experience running a specific machine. Okay. Now, this guy has worked in the 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 kind of environment for the job he was applying for. I'm trying to keep it vague. My apologies. But you know, you know, he got shot down by a company because he didn't have 6 months experience, but he has way more than 6 months experience in the environment, which is worth its weight just as much. Like, okay, so he might be a little bit rusty running a different kind of machine. Who the fuck cares? Well, we really want to be selective and fuck you. No, no, don't fucking give me that shit. The fact that anybody is willing to fucking accept the majority of jobs in this country is honestly a miracle. Because personally, I I got to tell you guys how it is. If I was applying for jobs, okay, like if I was out there trying to work for another company, I'm not going to undersell myself. Um, I'm not going to undersell myself. My resume is going to be huge. Um, and, well, whilst I might not be inclined to push too hard for, like, if you're trying to work at a flower shop, of course you're not going to, push for six-figure pay. All right, that's ridiculous. But I would be a lot less likely, especially considering everything that I know and everything that I've dealt with thus far. I am not inclined to be willing to take shit from any company, which makes me an absolutely terrible employee. But I'm also willing to take shots that nobody else will. All right. I am one of the select few that has a massive amount of balls. Okay. Brass is an understatement. I will literally put my own finances on the line if I believe in something, and I do not care if it kicks me in the ass. All right. I am naturally predisposed to being a true believer. Okay. Take that as you will. But the idea that a company would turn down legitimately solid fucking labor. This dude's in terms of what you want out of a worker, this dude's pretty fucking solid. The fact that a company would shoot him down because he doesn't have X amount of experience is just like, you realize that, people don't have these machines just hanging out, right? It's like, oh, what's a perfect example? Plastic extrusion. All right, there are companies that manufacture, plastic bottles, anything, could literally be anything. You could do so much with plastic. Most of our lives are built around plastic, but regardless, you've got companies that are expecting experience. They're expecting experienced people, and they're the only ones in the field in an area. Think about that. They are expecting experience as if everybody just has a fucking plastic extruder in their basement. They're expecting experience, and they are the only facility for 100 miles plus. All right, just massive distances that is actually doing any kind of plastic extrusion work. At what point do corporations realize that if you want skilled labor like that, uh, you're the only person who needs it? You're gonna have to train people. Oh my god, training expenses. Oh my god, sweet Jesus. Yeah, you're gonna have to pay to train people. Tough fucking shit. Nobody's going to college to learn plastic extrusion. Oh, but we need somebody to run our specific plastic extrusion machine that we got from the dark web on the internet from some company. It was probably cartel related in Mexico, and they got it from an old American manufacturer. The thing's like 800 years old, 80 years old, but still, I don't know why 8 and 80 is the most important number in my head right now, but these companies are expecting way too much from, especially from a country, the US. I mean, Jesus Christ, there is no manufacturing. There's no manufacturing in the US. Yeah, there is, but not enough to justify the idea that there would be enough free labor that's already pre-trained from a separate production facility. You know? You have to at least think about this shit. All right. Well, we'll just import foreign workers. Yep. Good luck with that. Trucking industry is eating shit from that right now. Absolutely eating shit. So instead of this was one of the more recent stories that came up. Instead of holding the states accountable for just essentially handing out CDLs like candy to foreign import migrants, um, they're going after the trucking companies for it. So it's going to be, I think the dispatchers are the ones who are going to be biting the bullet. So essentially, if a dispatcher hires a oh, what's the most predominant, an Indian truck driver or Sikh, um, whatever. There are a lot of Sikh truck drivers. Um, if they hire an Indian truck driver and something happens whilst they're going from A to B with a load, the penalty is not just going to apply to the driver, but it's going to apply to the freight broker as well, which is going to add a lot more overhead to the entirety of the process. And I'm okay with that, honestly. The amount of terrible driving that I've seen from these imported truck drivers is pretty bad. It's pretty bad. There was a video recently where on a flat stretch of highway, of course, goes both directions. Truck from the driving lane decides that he wants to pull a Yui, and of course, everybody else is expecting, all right, he's going to keep going forward. Holy shit, he's trying to pull a fucking U turn on a 70-mile-an-hour plus highway. Great. And a bunch of people died, of course. And of course, the foreign truck drivers just like, well, what do you mean? It's their fault. They didn't stop. It's a fucking highway. It's a highway. In terms of the risk that one can fucking take, driving on the highways is fucking terrible. It's fucking terrible. Everybody's trying to get as quick to wherever they gotta go as possible. The majority of people are driving aggressively, driving like maniacs. You fuck up on the highway, you could be a corpse in short order. It's the thing. But expecting skilled labor to fall out of the sky, like, oh my god, we need the schools, and like having the high schools do it, sure. But expecting people to get college educations and credentials, especially considering the list of credentials for a lot of these fields and trades has gotten so ungodly long. And then they mandate continuing education on top of that as well. But the lists for all of the credentials that corporations expect from applicants has gotten so long, nobody's going to do that. Nobody's going to do that. You are talking about putting people over $50,000, $20 to $50,000 in debt, requiring that they get, let's say, 20 different credentials. All right, 10 to 20. And each of those credentials have varying expiration times. So, in order to, stay viable in the job, you've got to study up and train and get through and, succeed at getting certified, to do X, Y, and Z. And then you got to go back every year, 2 years, 3 years. In most cases, 3 years is the max, It used to be you can get credentials and they were lifelong, and then it was 10 years, then it was 5 years. Now, most of the organizations that do these credentials, they're only good for 1 to 3 years. And then you got to go back, you got to study again and do it again. And you got to do this for all 10, all 20. And that's on top of the fact that these companies have an expectation of continuing education from the higher skilled levels. It's pointless. Nobody's going to jump through all these hoops for money that they could make pretty much anywhere. All right? The average person, the average warm body is getting paid between 30 and 50K a year. Pretty much no matter what they do, 30 to 50K a year is pretty much it. Okay? Nobody's bending over backwards, especially if they, to get a college education, to pay 50 grand and no interest on that. Oh, fuck no. Fuck no. You've got to be high. You've got to be fucking high to expect these people to go $100,000+ in debt so you can have a worker that you can use and abuse whenever the fuck you want to because you think that they won't leave because they can't leave because financially the consequences are massive. They're not going to be able to pay these fucking debts off anyway. That's the truth. One of the bigger things that's been coming up, and I mentioned it in a previous video that I've yet to post, but how do I put this? Somehow, in the infinite wisdom of this country and its educational system, somehow we've managed to send young adults to trade schools, and they're coming out with more debt than they would have if they went to a college. Only in America, only in America can you follow the right way. All right, because the reality is the right way is a financial trap, pretty much across the board. All right. Uh, um, mm, Essentially, college was the right way. Everything followed a standard path, and then as time went on, more barriers to entry came up. But every single barrier to entry, every single certification, every single degree, every single skilled trade now, the entire media pushes you to go in that direction. People follow that because people have known for a while go into the trades. The trades do make decent money. All right. So that becomes the big thing, the next big push. And then what ends up happening is all of the vultures come in and they start offering you the loans that you need in order to keep going to the increasingly more expensive trade schools. You end up going into massive amounts of debt with interest rates that are even higher than if you went to college. And it doesn't take into account the interesting issues that come from the trades, such as you might legitimately, and like if you get into welding, you might become allergic to the gases. All right. Even with stick welding, doesn't matter. Constantly inhaling those gases. Well, you should be in a well ventilated environment. Tell that to every single manufacturer in this country. Because I guarantee you their ventilation systems are 20 years old plus, if they even have them at all. You end up breathing the weld fumes, all right, from the flux burning off. You end up breathing all those fumes, and then you start becoming allergic to it over time. And eventually you end up in the fucking hospital from it. And then you can't weld anymore. All right, you can, but I mean, shit, you gotta trying to mix a welding mask with a gas mask is going to be an interesting look, very interesting look. But same would apply to if you were doing smaller scale electric work. I suppose it applied to electricians if they do any actual soldering, which for the most part they don't. Um, Well, maybe you're assembling circuit boards or something for Lockheed. I don't know. There are multiple different trades. Regardless, there are multiple different trades where people are getting taken to the cleaners because, of course, the media narrative is a trap to bleed even more money from kids who are desperate for a future that isn't cooking French fries. Okay? The majority of people are tired of this. They're sick of this shit, and I'm not going to tell them they're wrong. Corporations have been essentially bankrupting the entirety of the U.S. workforce, chasing after useless degrees and credentials that aren't needed to do the job. You can take any single job in corporate, all right, and give it to an eighth grader, and they can do it. They could do it. A fucking eighth grader can do nearly every single job in corporate. They can't do legal, obviously. You might not want them to touch the accounting books. All right, that's fair. But for everything else, you don't fucking need all this paperwork. All right, mandating that people get it. And honestly, again, I can guarantee that I can find some kid working at a 7-Eleven, at a Taco Bell, at literally at a Domino's, at a Pizza Hut, doesn't particularly matter. I can find some kid, some line cook, some base labor working at a grocery store. Put them in charge of a corporation, and they would run it better than any of the people they've got running the circuit right now. I can literally guarantee it because I know so many fucking people. It's not just that they have base level skills, it's the fact that they know how to think. All right. They know how to think. They know how to be subjective and objective. They know what works and what doesn't. Okay. And the reality is, the majority of corporations in this country, honestly, if they didn't have the corporate welfare from the government, all right, whether it's by contracts or other means, especially now with the investments, because Department of Defense is putting more and more money into actually, and the wider government as a whole, the defense industry, at least on the government bureaucracy side, is trying to directly invest more into these organizations because, whether people want to admit it or not, China is succeeding because they have state control of industry. We're failing because American corporations have gotten fat and happy, offshoring and just cutting every single responsibility or accountability that they possibly could. Okay. And it's become a threat to national security. The fact that not only can we not produce anything, but entire supply lines for critical goods are being maintained by corporations that do not have the ability to ensure that things keep flowing. All right. The reality is, for instance, there's a paint shortage happening. No bullshit. As it turns out, even though most base paints, a lot of it is titanium. All right, you use titanium white for a lot of base mixes. Anyway, and then of course you add pigment to it later. But now that we have oil shortages, all right, now that you can't get motor oil in Walmart increasingly, now that all sort actually that's another side note entirely. The newer vehicles, produced between 5 to 7 years ago, increasingly you can't get fluids for any of those vehicles, whether it's transmission fluid, whether like literally anything, anything. Um, it's all drying up. Corporations can't even keep the supply lines for the things that keep their machines moving. All right, can't keep any of it going. And that's going to spread beyond automotive. It's going to spread to literally every single machine and every single part in the supply chains. All right. All the supplies, all of the functions of major corporations have been built around importing from overseas. Once that's gone, there's not really a whole lot of anything you can do. All right. There's not too much you can do. All right. And to the extent, people will make the point, well, we can't have an oil shortage because we produce tons of oil in the US. Yes, and it's being sold to the Europeans and the Asian countries right now. Yeah. Do you think American petro companies, do you think that they're going to sell on the American market on the cheap and just keep the oil here? Fuck no. Fuck no. They're going to go make the extra 20, 30, 40, 50% they can selling to Australia, selling to the Philippines, selling to China itself. They don't care. They're going to make that money. All right. It is what it is. America, in terms of how America actually works, and this is definitely offbeat from anything professional, but it's the truth. America as a country is a whore to the world. It is the whore to the world, economically speaking. It has sold out its labor force. It has sold out its industry increasingly because the food industry, all right, is one of the few things that America is largely held on to: agriculture and processing. Okay. We're even starting to sell that out. That started a long time ago, but we're even selling that out. All right, America is just the whore for the highest bidder. Meanwhile, other countries that actually, like, you can look at their human rights abuses, by all means, go ahead. You can make the argument, make the point, that's fair. But other countries actually give more of a fuck about their population than we do. They're not automating all of their people out of existence. They're automating so they can support their people. They're automating, they're making things better, they're making the steps and moves in the right direction so that their people have a better future across the board, not just in one key area or the other. America, you can barely count America as a welfare state now with all the cuts. That was one of the few things that kept things calm in this country. All right, whether you like to admit it or not, it's fine. But you cut people's food stamps. The only reason why you can't have riots in the United States is because food stamps. All right. Once you get rid of all of the government gimme dats, once you get rid of all of that, there's not really much else. Like you are eliminating with all of that, you are eliminating the few guardrails left that would give people a reasonable enough excuse to stay out of fucking trouble. Okay. Well, regardless, this has gone on for quite a bit, and it's going to take a little bit to upload this. This is going to be the first video posted since I've been back. I've got a backlog of probably like 80 different recordings that I got to deal with, and I have an incredible amount of editing I'm going to have to do to those. All right. A lot of them will probably uh, Alt F4 out of history. All right. But as it stands, if you are trying to start a small business, if you're interested in starting a small business, there's a video to kind of help along, kick around that topic a little bit. If you are looking to directly compete with some of these corporations, don't let their size scare you, because you absolutely can. All right? You absolutely can. And at the rate that their credit expansion has gotten, the fact that they are effectively useless, okay, you do absolutely have room to compete. You can't compete necessarily on price, but you give it a little bit more time, and all of the supply lines and systems that corporations, at least when it comes to physical production and physical sales, you give it a little bit more time, their entire supply lines are going to fall apart and collapse. All right. There is a very high likelihood that if you create an organization out of your, let's say you do it out of your garage, all right? Every home and trade shop, that video, you should pay attention to it. You can literally start a business just manufacturing base goods like watering cans, all right? Something simple, something simple. You can likely create anything and just give it time. Just give it time to do it on the side. And I guarantee as the supply lines fall apart, corporations are going to need shit to sell. Whether it's the retailers, whether it's the corporates looking to do their rebranding, doesn't matter, which for the record, most OEM parts are secretly Dorman. All right, when it comes to car parts. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't want to acknowledge that. But the auto dealers, all right, going back a long time, they buy Dorman parts and they just tear the Dorman label off, take out any of the prints that are in there, and they slap their label on it and they double the price or triple or more the price for the exact same part. Just figured you should know that. It's right off the top of my head. I'm going to end it here. If you like and appreciate the video, like, favorite, sub, share, do all the things, ring the bell, ding the bell, tug the bell, do all the things to your heart's content, to the bell, hype it if it comes up. If you're interested in personal or business consulting, or even sovereign, if you work for a municipality, doesn't matter. I will gladly help you all. And I might have an additional member joining. We shall see. But, but, if you are interested in consultation to help you either get your head out of your ass, get you back on track, or to actually develop and not end up getting torn apart when the entire dependency chain collapses, um, you let us know. You let us know. And with that, I will see you all next time. Have a good one.